a minute.
We on? Okay, good. Okay. Okay, welcome. Okay. Want to welcome you here to our special meeting tonight. And it's not on the agenda, but I'd like to rise and for a moment of silence and a flag salute by Mr. Olson.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start, I just want to, I think maybe, explain maybe a little confusion. Maybe it's out there in the public over this last few days that this meeting's more than what it is. It's not, from what I understand, the meeting was called by the City Council for a presentation from Mr. Hughes to explain what the city's role is in the special events and things like that. And it's got nothing to do, we're having a budget meeting, budget thing afterwards. And if things pertaining to that happens to come into the budget, that's fine. But this portion, it's a presentation, not a workshop to do anything with special events. It's basically a presentation on the community's involvement, or the city's involvement in special events, and we put that together for us. That's what we're basically the purpose of this meeting tonight. So maybe to relay any confusion as to why we're here. So, Mr. Lineback.
Mr. Mayor, in addition to that, staff's job tonight is to lay down the foundation for the Mayor and City Council for our special events programs and the like, as a foundation that we would anticipate would evolve into other meetings, workshops with the involved parties and the like. So this is the first step, just to let you know where we are right now and how it works for subsequent sessions. So with that, if I could have Roy Hughes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hughes. Go.
First, let me...
Yes,
Do you want to do a roll call?
Hey, that's a good idea. Roll call, please.
Mayor Jerome,
Here.
Mr. Roulette,
Here.
Mr. Crail,
Here.
Ms. Rich,
Here.
Mr. Rolfson,
Here.
Mr. Slavy,
Here.
Ms. Tillett.
Here.
Thank you for keeping me straight. Thank you. Mr. Hughes.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to give you this presentation. First, let me make sure that you understand too.
I don't think your mic's on.
I don't have anything here.
It was.
How about that one there? Is that on? We just try and bring that right over to you.
You have a wire loose.
No, it's a screw.
There you go. Need more money for IT.
So we're going to raise Cal's pay for being a technician tonight.
There you go. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
No.
Let's try it again. How about now?
There you go.
All righty, that's even better. Since you gave us the direction on July 28th when we had the last budget workshop, it was requested that we come back. Staff has been crunching numbers and trying to put this into a presentation that won't take you a couple hours. So we're going to try to go through this. There is a section, I'm going to take it into two sections. First, the community building, address that, and then there's a section there to answer questions, so you might be able to write some questions there, or I may answer them by the time we get to that end of that section. And then I have the same setup as far as special events, and we can do that at the same time. Try to move this along and maybe answer the questions at the end as easy as possible. Again, I want to thank our staff for getting the numbers. I want to thank the Lake County Tourism Board for helping us. There were a lot of inputs that we got from different organizations and vendors that helped us with the numbers. So as we go through this, some of these numbers are basically numbers that we've gathered from different sources, put them into a context, and we'll go from there. Shameless plug on the first one, we actually have a movie for the Honky Tonk Highway coming on Friday evening down at the lakeside at Evans Park. I just thought I'd throw that up there since this is the way we used to look before we had special events. Just thought I'd throw that in there. First of all, I want to bring Chris Carson up here, and I want you to meet him. He is the coordinator that we have for the culture and special events coordinator that we hired just 5 years ago, believe it or not. And Chris, you take a stand so people know who you are, if they can't recognize you. His job, when it comes to the community building, has different roles than it does when he does special events, but he's in charge of both the community building and the special events. And so that's why I wanted to put this out there. I'm certainly not going to read everything there for you, but I think you'll understand that his job is always going to be a liaison or the middle person between the groups that need the facility and our resources. His job is to make sure that things run smoothly, that we follow city policy, and that we try to get the best result out of those activities that he is in charge of. In the community building, the history of the community building, basically a lot of people may know about it, but it was built by donations from individuals within the city back in the late 1929-30 time period. And then we did a renovation about 5 years ago with the facility. At that time, we basically wanted to make sure that we kept the character of the building the same, which is that there was opportunities for productions in there, but it was also open and available to the residents to use as well. There are a lot of agencies out there that have used their theaters as only theaters and not a combination. But to uphold the way it was done before, that's why this building is open for rentals on an individual basis as well as it is for the bigger productions. That's it. Timing is everything. I want you to take a look here. These are the type of activities that are in the building that use our facility. Community buildings, concerts, theatrical shows, wedding receptions, community events, art exhibits, lecture series, parties, and there are a lot of different agencies that use that don't pay any rent, and generally they are like the Lake County government or other groups or our city groups or something that use it. The school system uses it for graduations and things. So I wanted you to see that. But I want you to know that the amount of revenue that we receive for the building is primarily based off of only rental. We have small streams of revenue coming in from ticket sales, online ticketing, we get a portion of that. We have fundraisers that are done to help raise funds to add to the community building. There are sponsorships and donations, and then self-promotions, and those are with partnering or running them on ourselves. But primarily, the major part of that is only in rental numbers. The next one tells you what those rental rates are. Those rental rates there, we had taken all of the parties and all the stakeholders that use the facility. We had a basic committee that came together. We went out to different agencies throughout the areas that use similar buildings like ours and got their rental rates and then tried to apply them, and we came into the midsection of that rental rate. And in comparison to others, we're right in the ballpark as far as the rates as they stand right now. And when that committee voted, they voted on this as well. So they had input as to how much they were going to pay and what was being paid. If you'll note, the number of productions has gone up since the building reopened after the renovation. And if you note that the number that we have this current year is 52, that's productions. That's people who have paid to have a production in there, whether it's a concert, whether it's a show, or something of that nature. That's not really based off of rentals. It's just the big shows that we have in there. And if you can see, the value in the way that we've run the facility and the building is that we are now getting people calling us. When we first opened and reopened the building, they didn't have a marketing program for this. So we were basically going out trying to find anybody that wanted to rent the facility. Subsequently, now people are calling us about using our facility because of the reputation that we have as far as the building itself and the proximity. Mount Dora has a value when it sells tickets. And I'm sure certain those that have used the facility would echo that as well. They're not coming back if they're not losing money. If they're losing money, they're not coming back. So they're making money when they run them here in Mount Dora. This is the revenue that we've collected over the period of time. If you'll note that the 27 and then the dip down to 23 that's on the board up there, That was when a former council group decided that they wanted to give nonprofits a better rate than what was being given to the resident or the other individuals that use it. So consequently, they voted to take and give a half of the residential rate as part of the rental, which is why we changed it back 2 years later with a different group in there that saw the value of putting it there at least equal to what the resident pays. And subsequently, our revenues bounced back up, and as you can see, they've continued to bounce back up to where they are right now. This is the budget that is currently being presented for council as far as part of the budget process. If you'll note, the administrative costs are not in this particular budget. It is in this, all of those salaries for the people who work in special events is under one banner, which is in the special events. We divided out and pulled out this year when we did the budgeting process to try to identify all costs associated with special events, so everything went in underneath that particular banner. You know, if you take the monies that's over there and move them back over here, or half and half, you'll probably get the same thing. You just get a deduction in special events or whatever, but the monies are still the same, whichever line item they're on. But if you take a look at what we have there, you'll see that one of the things that I wanted to address here is that you had asked us to come back in regards to the sound system needs. That was part of something that probably will be discussed tonight in the special events, but I wanted to address it here. You asked me to give you some options. I put those options in there, and I gave you what I thought would be the minimum needs, as opposed to if we go out and buy half of it and maybe the other. As I was relating to the staff, if we buy the turkey, let the fixings be done by others, but we have to buy the bulk of what the middle is because we're going to use that facility. That was the reason I put that up there. We can discuss that a little bit better, but I did put a picture of the array system in there, and if you have been in the building, you know that we only have one big speaker up there as opposed to an array like this. So you'll get a better and clearer picture. The way I kind of related to it is that if we put this system in, you're going from an 8-track to a Bluetooth by the system. That's kind of putting it into terms of how inept that system is, and those of you that have had meetings in there, when we've had council meetings, you know our sound doesn't work as well there. So I'll leave that as part of that is concerned, but wanted to throw that in there for you guys to look at that, and then we can discuss it maybe in the budget process for the special meetings. Here's the operational cost versus the revenue, and I've noted that the administrative costs are not in there. And if you take a look at the cost that we have, we're covering 68% of the cost of that facility that is being run out of that budget right now. Basically, you have a deficit of running that facility for a year at $27,350. And that's pretty good if you consider that the air conditioning alone is $30,000 in that budget a year. So we're covering a large portion of our revenue, and it's continuing to climb. And as more people come in for productions, we hope to see that revenue go up. But again, when you're only running revenue off of just rentals, I don't know if you're going to ever get to the point where you're running the building at a positive. The only way to do that, and that's why we've got it in here, is that there's $25,000 that's set aside for both use and for revenue. If we get the opportunity, we have in the past, like with the Night of the Irish that we did, we partnered, the city partnered with another organization, brought that group in here, and we split the proceeds on that. We realized 3 times the amount of rental by doing it that way than we would have if we had just rented the facility out. And so when there's an opportunity for us to use some funds to run a production ourselves, or where we can see that there's going to be a profit greater than that, then we can bring these people in, or if we partner up with somebody, we do that. But only what we spend and only what we bring. Now, we've been doing this the last couple of years, and we have never lost a dollar. We've always been above and beyond the cost of that thing, and we're very careful as to how that is done, because we're working with city money when we do that. But that's a way of bringing additional revenue in when we can run a production one of our own and stuff. So the 25, if you take it out, isn't going to change the figures that you have there, because the 25 is not earned and it's not spent. It would be a wash. But it's only what we spent, and we haven't spent up to the last couple of years 25. But let's say a great production opportunity presents itself where we can partner with somebody and we have to bring in $6,000 or $12,000 to make that work, but we know that we're going to make $15,000 on it. It's just a way of generating revenue, and that's what we've done, but we're very careful. We usually do about 1 or 2 a year just to make sure. The next one, some of you had asked about the usage percentage. We went back, took a look at all of our facilities, use dates and dates. Now, there's 209 days of Monday and Thursday. We didn't cut out the holidays. We didn't cut out any of the other days that were closed. But if you look, 55% of our available time and date is being used in that facility. And when you consider that generally our summer program or the summertime is probably our most dead time, then the rest of the time is collecting this usage there. And so you can see the difference on that. When you go up to the Friday, Sunday, which is when most of the productions are done, generally they're not really done during the week, you can see that we're basically almost at 60% usage on weekends throughout the whole year. Generally, the weekends of the summer are generally not used that often. So we're getting good use on the weekends of that facility. Taking from the Lake County Tourism Department, we sent all of our figures, attendance figures, to Robert Chandler and Adam over there and asked them to run it through their mechanism for how they figure economic impact. So any of the numbers that we have here and going forward are all by them. We gave them the numbers, they ran it through their model, and they gave us back the numbers. So those numbers come directly from them. And in talking with Robert Chandler, he basically stated that he is happy with Mount Dora. Basically, we get more funds here because of the quality of our programs, and he was willing to come here and speak tonight and say that, but I told him I could relay it. We get more money because of the quality of our programs and the way we run our facilities and so forth and so on, that we get more money than some of the larger counties in this city, in Lake County, because of the way we run our, and the number of events that we do. So people are coming here to Mount Dora and we're getting paid for that. So if you look at the economic impact, it's $956,000 of impact that comes into that. And that is a valuable asset to have. It's a problem that is not, because that means that they're coming into town, they could be spending money before the event, they could be going to dinner, they could go anywhere around this area either before or after. But that economic impact also translates to sales tax. And of course, the more sales tax that we have, the less we have to pay in property value because we're getting more money back from this Lake County. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well. That is our growth. The other part about that is that in order to close the gap, a couple years ago in 2014, a group was put together and they decided that they wanted to help the building, and they were called the Patrons of the Community Building. That group, you've seen some of their work when you go over there now and you see the furniture that they have in the lobby. They've decorated it at different times of the year, they've painted it, they've done other things, they've done fundraisers in order to offset what we would have had to put in the general fund and in the budget. They have actually offset those costs by paying for themselves. So when they paid $12,000 for the furniture, that didn't come out of any account that we would have had to put in there for that building. So when you take a look at the whole scope of the community building itself, the only thing I can report happily is that we've got a model, it's working, and it seems to continue to grow. And I think that that was the purpose of what we were tasked to do, which is to keep the building active, make it available to the citizens, and also try to get productions in here at the same time and open it up for nonprofits as well. And that's what we've done. The last is our future challenges. We're talking about marking of the facility and shows. One of the things I've said to this group before is that it's known as the Community Building, Mount Dora Community Building. That's a great name for the last 80 years, but it's real hard to market that. It would be nice if we had something like, I don't know, the Globe Theater or something, but you know what I'm saying is that we don't have a marketing name for it, so we have history behind it, but it's not exactly the best marketing name in my opinion. We could have a contest along with your flag with how to name it if you want. Upgrades to older system. The building, when it was built and renovated, they basically did the outside, they left the guts pretty much the way they are. And we have been fixing them for the last 5 years since it opened up. And trying to upgrade areas, whether our sound system, mistakes that were made when the sound booth upstairs was too loud because it's up in the ceiling as opposed to down on the ground level where you can actually hear where the sound is. So we had to move the whole panel downstairs, things of that nature. We added steps that were not originally in the plans to the stage. And we've constantly been doing little things to upgrade that. With the patrons, they are even coming in there and seeing things and doing more things as well. But chairs, tables, they take a beating. We have to replace them. We have painting in the facility that needs to be done. We have some drainage issues when it comes raining. Those of you that have been down the side slopes, when the pump's not working down there, you know what I'm talking about. So we still have those challenges there. Operational cost, maintenance, budgeting, and of course parking is always going to be some part of the issues that we have as well. And then rental and versus production. What are we? Are we still balancing it? Or are we okay with what the model is right now? And so that, in a nutshell, and as quickly as I can put it across to you, brings us to your side of the coin if you'd like to ask some particular questions about that area right there.
Roy, the $956,000 economic development from the community building, is that an annual number?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What we did was take the attendance of these events when they happen in the building. So if you get 300 people or 200 people or even 100 in there, we basically count them and keep a record of that. Chris does in his office. And so we know what the total attendance is, so that when someone calls us and say, well, what's your average attendance? We can probably give them a number that say, well, you can pull maybe 250, or if we go to, you know, the ticketing system that we use, it can tell us where the people are coming from, so that when we advertise, we know where they're coming from. So, yes, sir, we take the number, we took the total number that we have so far this year, we sent them to Adam and Robert, and they ran it through their model, and that's what they came back with.
Second, I got a couple little ones here. The options for the sound system with shared with donated dollars, is there a consideration of maybe having a donor's plaque or something to recognize those?
Sure. I mean, what we're looking for is that we have talked to groups. There are groups out there that are interested. There are grants that we're trying for. So we're just trying to figure out if, like I said, we want to get the turkey and then we'll work on the fixings. But the fixings are really the cables, the amps, all of the things that are connected to it. But if the city wants to upgrade that building and be able to bring in a better sound system, I'm not even looking at shows, I'm just looking at a better sound system. This is the way we've been asked to go.
When was the last time the fees were adjusted?
The fees were adjusted, what, 3 years ago? 2 years ago.
That's fine, that's fine. I just
Yeah, and
didn't-
that was with the committee.
Sure. And you mentioned wedding receptions. You ever had a wedding in there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we have.
I want to compliment you for the job well done on this. It's a good overview of everything.
I have a great staff, they gave me everything I needed.
Thank you, Neil.
Hi, it was an excellent presentation. I have just a couple more questions.
Sure.
Mr. Wolfson asked and you answered some of them. Okay, so what year was established? That was good, 2 years ago. Okay, it looks, so the fees were adjusted a couple of years ago. When I look at the budget for the community building versus the special events, and you said the administration, it looks like there are still some duplicates, and I don't know if they're, I mean, I see mail and freight, rental insurance, other current office supplies, operating supplies, and then I see those over here as well. Do you just sort of say, okay, I've got this many people in here and this many FTE here, and I'm breaking it out like that? Or
We have an office in the community building, which we have a staff person who's part-time that works out of. So a lot of the supplies that we have come out of there, so when they're selling tickets and they're operational out of that office. But the building itself still has needed supplies, toilet paper,
Got it.
paper
Okay.
towels, things of that nature.
Okay.
And then special events has similar nature as well.
dues and publications?
Yes, same thing.
Okay.
We become members of particular groups that when we go to their functions or we go to their conferences, we can pick up on what they're doing, and Chris is primarily the one who's been attending all, in fact, he's the one who's attended all of them, actually. And so I'll give you that. But he goes there, and this is where we steal ideas from other people and come back and try to make them our own.
Okay, and then I see the 25,000 here that you referenced under operational costs versus revenue here, up in the revenue line, and then down again under promotional activities / ads. Is that what that is?
Well, it's, the promotional app, it would be is like, when we say promotional, meaning if we get, let's say we have somebody who, we pay 5,000, we pull it from that promotional to pay that group to come in, and if we partner with somebody else, we pay half of what that is, and that's what it's for. So whatever revenues that we take out of that account, we have to put back in on the revenue side, and so far we've been successful doing it.
Okay. And then on the weekend usage percentages, Friday through Sunday?
Yes.
What is the usage figure itself? I mean, what does that represent? Is that number of events, number of people?
It's just rentals, whatever rental is in
Number
our
of
facility.
events.
I can even break it down in further, but I didn't want to bore you, so I just brought the.
Well, I was just curious as to what the usage.
The lobby has had 93 uses in the
Got it.
lobby.
Okay.
The auditorium had 75 uses, and believe it or not, the green room, which is downstairs, has basically had 92 uses.
Okay,
So, and I'll give you the figures as far as the weekdays, since I'm on a roll here.
okay,
The green room was 115, which is the downtown area for weekdays. 91 was the lobby, and 63 was the auditorium.
okay.
Not a bad
No, that's,
workout.
yeah. Okay, and I think okay, so then when you come to the economic
Impact?
impact, this 956,000 translates into so many dollars per person?
Spent by the person.
And what is that?
I don't have the model. How much? $1.20? 100. Well, actually, in talking with Robert, it was like $85. But the way they do the formula is that each person, they calculate if they're in the city for a certain amount of time or whatever, they put a value to it. I don't, believe me, I'm not a mathematician.
Okay, I was just curious
But
as
it's
to what.
around $85 the
Okay.
last time I talked to him.
But it's per person.
Per person,
And it
and they're
translates
assuming that a
into
family coming
approximately
into town is gonna eat dinner, maybe buy something.
$85.
You know, whatever.
Okay, and then,
Real quick on that, that's,
If I believe what Robert uses those numbers for is when we have to apply for grants, when they give us grants, if there's enough people, enough things, they know this is what it's generating for Mount Dora, and it's worth them giving us money for grants to get more people to come in,
And that's why he said
curious.
he's welcome to give us those grants because we can produce the numbers.
okay, and then I just have a comment on the future challenges where it talks about parking. It would seem to me that events here would be an ideal trial for a valet parking type of
Sure.
arrangement. Just, that's my comment. Thank you very much. It was
Welcome.
excellent.
Anyone else?
I've got some questions.
Okay.
thank you for your presentation.
Hi.
So,
Thank you. So I just went through as you went by putting some notes. I noticed on the revenue for ticket fees that the ticket fees were something like $500.
Mhm.
So without knowing anything else, that seems as a line item really small. So maybe you can explain how that works, and what that is that it commands its
I'll
own
let
line.
Chris handle that because he's the one who actually set that revenue stream up and he can explain it to you.
All right. For the record, Chris Carson, Events Coordinator, City of Mount Dora, and Community Building, while we're on it. That right there is an estimation of what we would bring in for ticket sales. For example, if there's a production going on from a rental, let's say if Brian Young's having a show, and we're selling tickets from our office here, or maybe the community building prior to, we get X amount of dollars, it's a dollar fee for every ticket that's sold at production. So if we're taking phone calls, and we get a lot of phone calls at our office, and certainly we want to encourage anyone and everyone to come to our building regardless, at least we have a source of revenue that backs that up.
Great. And then on the community building fees and charges, it was mentioned that we took the midsection of rental rates. So,
Well, when I
When
say
we are-
mid-level, I mean, when we looked at it as a whole, we were in, it's like market conditions. basically, we're at the top of that level with market conditions, which it can tip either way. Most of the individuals that were in that meeting were the stakeholders that you see here tonight. That was the price point that we felt was the good point to put it at. So when I say mid-level, I'm really just talking more about the price point than I am anything else.
Okay. And then, how often do we have that someone's turned down because the facility's already booked? Do we keep track of that?
Well,
Because that goes back to my earlier question. If you get, if you're booking it and then someone comes back later, it suggests that your rates aren't too low, or the opposite. So I don't need to know the answer. The fact that you don't have the answer kind of tells me the answer. So that's okay.
I did have an answer.
Oh, did you?
We haven't turned anyone away.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
if we have somebody who wants to use a weekend that's already booked, then we have certainly tried to work with them to see if we can find another alternative for them. But there are occasions where someone may come
All right,
in.
that-
But yes, but on the major events that we have in the building, you have up to a year in advance that you can book that building by putting your application and making your payment.
Right.
So a lot of people have learned that, for example, I've got a wedding coming up and I want to have a reception in there. They call us a year in advance and we put them in. They pay their payment and they're booked, so we book around them. I can't remember the last time we've had any kind of double booking because it's run through our office and Chris is in our office, so we always have that backup checkup system.
Okay, good. So just a comment, sales tax, as it works, we should all remember that we get 1/3 of the sales tax divided by 14 cities based on population.
Right, only population.
So while we might bring in a lot of money, we share it based on our population. So for the mathematicians, we should start annexing people into the city. The $956,000, my comment to that would be, and I have done this kind of work. There are lies and damn lies and statisticians, and you can make this number better or more believable if you can tie your tickets to your restaurants, your tickets to your purchases that you have, stamp your ticket, get 5% off or whatever, so that you can drag that transaction down into the community. Because, if I were just a naysayer, I'd say everyone drives in from wherever, goes to the show and goes back home.
Yeah.
And that just helps you tighten it up.
Now, the vendors that.
But I'm saying is, I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
but I can't say the opposite either. So I'd like to be able to.
On that real quick.
Is that number, is that for Mount Dora, or is that a Lake County overall number?
That is Mount Dora.
Okay, good, thank you.
And the answer to the other question is that you were stating is that the vendors that rent the facility from us, many of them do that with the restaurants and have the tickets and drive people downtown. So example, Visit Mount Dora, if they run a community event in the building, they got their tickets and their prices online where they basically have coupons there that people can get. I've seen them, I've used them, so I know. So they have them, but they're driving it down there. We're not a part of that because, again, we're just renting the facility. So
Oh, yeah.
the revenue we get from that is only that.
Right.
So our streams, as they are low.
And then the naming of the facility, I'm okay on naming it. Of course, I would sell the naming rights. I would never just have a
I'm
contest.
with you on that.
That's all I had for comments.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Ed?
A while back, we were talking about charging a power fee, and I saw here where we have a light fee. Is that what that was for?
No, sir, actually, that's just part of our brochure that we, basically, the other part of that also lists all the applications that we have in all our other buildings. And when you rent a field from us, we charge you for the lights. I just did take that column out.
Okay, so $1,100 for renting the community building for a whole day for a profit organization.
Yes, sir.
That covers all the manpower of
No.
our people?
No, that just calls the rental. They have to pay the staff also. That's not in there.
Okay.
Part of the reservation system is any of our staff that work that facility, they have to pay them.
Okay,
That's
so
separate.
Strictly
than-
rental? That's good.
It is. Because and I will say this for Chris, is that we had the Weight Watchers example next door where that's a profit. They were paying us for using that facility next door when they were doing the renovation over at the chamber, for example. and we realized a lot of revenue through that. So the nonprofits paid their share, and we got the benefit of it.
Okay, moving off, or, you know, adding on to that, the utility thing here, it looks like we pay more, or the building has to pay for its power, correct? And
Yes.
lights and water, all that kind of stuff. Looks like it's paying more than they're actually getting in rental. So, I mean, maybe we should tack on a power charge, or,
Well,
you know, like you gotta pay a little bit of.
the unfortunate thing is that how do you regulate that? Because the AC system or the system that's in there has to run at a certain temperature all 24 hours of the day. So it's minimal, and our rental fees somewhat cover the time that they're in there. To answer your question, we've looked at it, but in all honesty, when it's got to be running all the time in order that we don't get mold back in the building, we don't have some of the other musty stuff, it's running 24 hours a day, and at $30,000 a year, that, especially with the summer, that's not a bad deal. We try to keep it down at a low. That's why you have the curtains on the windows in there to keep the coolness down. 40,000, I'm sorry, misspoke.
So for the most part, everything's covered except for the administrative fees like you addressed earlier.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Pretty good. It's in really good health. And taking a look like this helps us validate what we believe with numbers. So it was good. It was a good practice on our part to be able to take a look at it. You ready for the special events?
Any other questions on community building?
I don't know if we should talk, well, from a policy standpoint, based on your comments, just have a few comments, is that if it's not fully utilized, when I look at the rates that we charge, I think of it this way, that if a local group, that you have your tiered structure, that if a local resident, you want to make it available to them, that possibly reducing the rate is fine. I'm not sure, and that I'm really not that keen on, because I always think about the facility itself. If it's our facility, you know, it gets wore down, just, you know, whoever is the entity doesn't matter to me. In terms of how it wears the building down, it shouldn't matter. So I'm struggling with the idea of tiered pricing, that if you just have a set fee, or maybe you have it where each resident or each nonprofit gets one event a year that they can do at the discounted rate, and then the rest, it becomes a de facto for-profit activity, something that way.
Well, that will reduce your number of revenue and go in the opposite direction.
How so?
Well, if you change the rate and give them a free rental instead of paying for the rental.
Oh, no, I'm saying
Yeah.
first one at the resident rate or nonprofit rate,
Right.
and then anything additional at the top rate.
Resident and nonprofit are both on the same rate.
Yeah.
schedule. So they get the same benefit.
Mhm.
And then those from outside the town pay a higher rate, and those that are there for a profit they pay the higher rate.
Well, I mean, I understand accounting, and I certainly understand a little bit about the tax law of what's profit or not profit.
Yeah.
But I, representing the citizens of Mount Dora, just can't buy the false argument of what a profit and a nonprofit is when I'm looking at the asset. The asset just doesn't care. The asset itself gets wore out, whether it's a group that's a nonprofit or a for-profit working on it. So from my position, I just don't see why we should be having an advantage to some entities based on their accounting or tax situation. And that's all I have on it.
All right.
But, you know, that's it.
Shouldn't this be discussed at the next session?
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe this
And that's fine.
It's a great idea.
merits further discussion,
He's
but,
there from a policy, he's looking at it from a policy standpoint too,
Yeah.
which isn't bad, so.
We're always reviewing it, so any input is.
Yeah,
always-
just wanted to keep the thought on that, because you had the other chart
I made a
where
note.
that, I think that argument failed at one point.
Yes.
And so, we can go back to that again. And any other questions about the presentation? Mr. Grail?
Just one, and Chris, maybe this is for you or Roy, or tag team it however you want to. Let's talk about the community building sound system needs.
if we're able to upgrade the sound system, the $91,000, somehow come up with the $91,000 sound system, what does that do for us going forward in terms of revenues and rates and so on? What do we get for investing in that?
That's a great question. It's a very competitive market, facilities, and there's only so many facilities in Central Florida, not just Lake County, but Orlando, Volusia County, Seminole County. And in fact, we contacted a lot of these facilities to find out what their rental rates are. How many seats are in each facility? And each seat in each facility contains a dollar value. So hypothetically, if you're having a show that costs you $5,000, and then you have the rental fee and all your bills, and it's $11,000 act, anything else that you tack on would affect your ticket price. So every promoter is going to ask, well, what are all the fees? I need everything. We give them that. With that added sound system, it allows and opens more opportunities for other promoters to come in here and say, well, this is something I can afford to make work. You know, and those quality shows that demand that type of sound system or quality of sound system would fit most riders. And that's where the big boys like Travis Tritt and, you know, a lot of the great shows that Nancy's put on in the past, they all call for a certain standard sound amplification. So if we can meet that to an extent, we can get more pull of a promoter to come here. As well as the other benefits when it comes to having a council meeting or any other type of water authority meetings, anything that we do, we certainly can meet those needs, whether they're audio or visual. So it certainly opens the door. It's it's an investment of $91,000 or up to $91,000, but it could really pay off in a minimal amount of time.
So, just check me on this.
Please.
If Travis Tritt's folks say, what would it cost to rent the community building for 2 days? You'd give them that rate, and they would think to themselves, but we know the sound system, and we will need to bring our own or rent one from some company that's going to add to the cost of us bringing Travis Tritt to Mount Dora. Could we, if we owned that sound system, could we command more rent because they wouldn't have to go out and additionally rent that equipment?
Certainly. It enhances your facility, which in turn, why spend $5,000 on sound amplification when you can spend a couple $100 more on rent and have all that in place? And then, you know, time is money. So each hour you rent a facility, you're paying an added hour. You imagine having everything already installed, plug and play. You know, in the city, all the city events like the Rhythm of the Night, the Irish Dance Spectacular. How easy it would be for us to bring in the crew and, you know, do half the amount of work that it would take to meet their rider in production.
The big thing is not so much you're making more rental, and because you're not going to add to the building rental, but what you're gaining is these groups that come in and we have an analog system and they have digital systems. So like you're saying, you either have to go out and rent a system, own one themselves, or you know they have to go somewhere to get it. So if we already have it, what the advantage is, if they have, instead of bringing their equipment in, we just basically will charge that rental rate for that equipment, so to speak, but not a rental on the building. But it'd be an add-on. It'd be one of those add-on prices.
Correct.
Is what you're looking at, not a rental for the building, be an add-on price. It's available for somebody, you need it, we can charge them maybe, I wouldn't venture guess, let's say an extra $500 or something, be able to use that equipment, maybe more, I'm not sure, because running a big bank of sound system I know is costly, and to bring these things in here. And so if it's already here and all you gotta do is plug into it, it gives us an advantage maybe over somebody else, but everybody is going that way. And in these groups, there's been a lot of groups that we haven't, we're able, I guess, couldn't even get because on account of our sound system. And, go ahead.
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Remember, everybody, that let's assume there's 300 people in the community building at one event, and if the formula, rounding it up, making it easy math, is $100, it's 90, 80 something economic impact per person. That one thing, even if we lost a few dollars, brings $30,000 in economic impact to the city of Mount Dora, especially the businesses downtown. That's not a small piece of change, and for just one event with one community center. So I have no problem with us investing as a community or as a government in things like that that promote our city and garner the hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars rather, in economic impact annually.
And people vote with their feet. If there's a better sound system in the villages, for example, or let's say it's in Eustis because they have a system over there and we don't, they're gonna go there. So part of having, it's kind of like our water park situation, you know? We're the last ones to get that. We've got a sound system that's kind of in that realm here. We're back here, and a lot of other people are meeting the riders that these larger groups are asking as commonplace now. So it puts us out of the market if we're not going to put the right sound system in there to draw those people in. Still.
Okay, so I think what I heard was that this investment of 91,000 or whatever is going to be for an adjunct system that would only be applicable or added on to? That, I mean, that's what I thought I heard Chris say, well, no, we would just charge extra for it. So if you had, you know, your everyday garden variety type of group in there that did not require a enhanced audio system, are you gonna have two different levels of
No.
charging, or
yeah.
this replaces the old one?
It
It's
takes-
not an adjunct?
It's our 8-track being moved out and our Bluetooth being moved in. We're in
All
a
right.
digital age, and that's where we're at.
That was-
We have an analog in there, and as we've got Manny here from IT, I'm gonna put him on the spot, but he would probably agree with me, it's an old system, if we have that in there.
Okay, that was not immediately clear.
Okay, we want to clear that up for you. Any system we put in there is used for everybody, which benefits everyone at the same time as well. There's only one system going to be put in there.
So it would seem logical to me then that if you had this enhanced audio system, you had a top-of-the-line system, that you would then be able to accommodate top-of-the-line productions.
Now you got it.
Which means that then you would be able to perhaps raise your rental rates a little bit,
Possibly.
because people are going to be more interested in seeing top-of-the-line productions and will be willing to pay a little bit more for them. Is that
Yes.
a logical
That's a
type of
logical
thing?
conclusion. And also, people who live in Mount Dora don't have to travel somewhere else to get the same quality that they would if they went outside the city. They can do it right here at home.
Okay, so again, I guess this goes back to my previous comment of perhaps we should entertain relooking, you know, as a consolidated look as to perhaps if we did do this, then we need to perhaps look at our fee structure as well, in
That's
concert
possible.
with
Yes,
it.
absolutely.
Okay.
Again, I think when you're looking at the sound system, the sound system's an add-on, so that's really the only fee they really need to look at, not the hall itself.
No, he just said it's
It- yeah.
No, it's,
And before we get too far in the
Right.
weeds here, that's
Yeah.
probably going to be a budgeting workshop
Right, it is a budget,
conversation.
but yeah, and I
I
understand.
know we've kind of gone down that road, but if we move back to
It
special
was part of your
events-
presentation, so
Yeah.
I think we
I threw it in
got
there
we
just-
digressed a little bit to that, but it is a good talk about, the future of that building, and because, we're talking about the building itself. and,
All things are possible.
And it's gonna be part of your structure, but it's not a, okay, we'll talk about it a little later.
Okay.
And, okay, any other questions on the community building on this presentation?
Okay, then
Move
let's go to
forward.
special events,
Thank you.
which is also another wonderful thing.
Who is that guy in the middle is what I want to know for this picture.
I don't know.
We can never, I don't think we're able to catch up to him.
That's not you, Nick?
Wait, what were we talking about?
He's talking about the
This guy
picture right
right
there.
there, talking to the guy over there.
in the kilt,
And that's definitely not me.
and the Scottish dog that's next to him.
You got a twin out there.
Definitely.
He said he would deny the picture anyhow.
My knees don't look that good.
All right, first of all, basically on special events, a little bit of history here again. In the past, the special events were under the police department. Marie Shelton was the person who ran that. She was much like a facilitator in the sense that paperwork came in, public safety was addressed, police officers are assigned, and pretty much the vendor ran the show. In 2011, when Marie retired, Mr. Quinn, in discussion with myself and others, decided that it might be best to put it under recreation since we're in charge of the facilities, the rentals, and all of the other support groups that were part of that, and put a more of a full-time position on that. Consequently, we hired Chris, and so basically the department that you see now has been developing only for the last 5 years. But you'll see some major changes that have been made in that time period there, where we've streamlined the ordinances, we've energized sponsorships and donations and so forth and so on. And I credit all of this basically to Chris and his management, because he is a person of one. And this is, you know, one of the things about this job is that if he were paid by the hour, we couldn't afford him. You know, so he spends an awful lot of time doing a lot of the work that we have him do, but he does so with dedication and passion, and it can't be said enough. Those that have worked with him that are here know how much he works just to try to get people satisfied and finding the answer. We try to find answers and solutions. So I wanted to bring that kind of that history up, and then of course he has different kinds of responsibility. Again, his responsibilities here are to move the paperwork, be the middle person, work with the different groups and people, find the solutions, and then make sure that they run top-notch and with our resources, whether it's through our staffing, the billing, the public safety, any of those things. He is the man. He is there on the site when things are done and need to get done. He works closely with the police department, and Dave works with him in regards to the parking, and they basically work out a system. It's a partnership between us and public safety and other departments to make sure that any event that we're running or that we're a part of goes off successfully, because their success is our success. When people leave here, we don't want them to say, that's the worst event I've ever been in, I'll never go back to Mount Dora again. So his dedication, his passion, and those that he works with know that that's what our goal is. And like I said earlier, I was going to put the Swiss symbol up here, is generally we tell everybody that comes through the door, we're the Swiss. We don't take sides on one side or the other. You come in, you put your application in, and then we start from there. And that's where we have this application process. I've given you a flow chart as to what that process is, a timeline, but no event that's run in this city doesn't start with an application form put in first, so that we can put it down. And when they do put those applications in, they're making full payment on that activity prior to that event, so that we have the money there. And then we'll lock up that date. Now, we have events that we know that are standard events that we know that are marked out every year, but they bring, as soon as their event is over with, many of them bring their application in the following week for the next year to make sure that they've got the same spot. So we work with those people and the vendors who basically use it. This is a special event budget that you were have in your packets. That does have the administrative cost in there, and I wanted to make sure that we put this in there for you to see. If you're on your tablet, you can actually enlarge it here. I know nobody can actually read that very well, but I thought I'd throw the numbers in there for you to want to see it. This again is the total budget, including all of the events and the cost along with that. And then this is the number of events that we have in the city currently going on right now. I mixed both the Cornerstone events and the other sponsored events in there, but that is the venues at the bottom that we use. If you'll notice that there are a large number of areas that we use. We're not just stuck to one place downtown. With the opening up of Evans Park, that's allowed us to do a whole lot more down there than we did before in the past. And it was because of council's help in making sure that we did the renovation down there correctly, that's worked out well. We couldn't do this without partnerships. A couple of years ago, a large number of groups had their areas, and there was very little communication between the different groups. We have been able to partner through Chris and his outreach to working with these people, that we're able now to pull people together for committees, much like we did on the fees that I was talking about, where they come in and they're part of the solution. They give us their issues, we try to find a common ground, and then we go from there. And that is, if anything, the nut of the whole thing. Working with each other in a partnership, we all succeed. And that's something that we take very seriously among our groups of people. And you'll see the different many groups in there. I may have missed a few, I'm not sure, but these are the major groups that we have worked with. You've seen them when we do parades, you've seen them when we do other events. These are the groups of people and partnerships that help us do our job. This is the number of events. If you notice that the number of events since 2011 has gone up, we have gone to as high as the 35. That was the year that the streetscapes was being done, and we were doing concerts or doing something to bring downtown, but we count them as events. So have you noticed that it reduced down from that? We do have some that come in, and maybe one year they do, like the car show may come in one year, but they don't come in the following. So this current year, we have had 30 events, or we have 30 scheduled events that are in the city. 9 of those events are cornerstone events. Cornerstone events are what we have put in our ordinance that basically states that the city is supportive and will pay the cost of these events to run these events. Most of them are holiday related, the Christmas in the park, the light up, so forth and so on. The different groups that we have in the city, the Christmas walk, all of those things that we have been supporting for years, we just put into a packet form that said, these are the cornerstone in there in the ordinance. Now, I did highlight the Scottish in there because the Scottish is not necessarily a event that's in the cornerstone, but that happened after we started putting this into the cornerstone. So we can add generally to that figure on cornerstone events after 5 years. We would go there because we like to get an event up to 5 years and have its feet up underneath it. And so we would be proposing later after the 5th year. We're going into our 4th year now. Next year, the year after that, we'll be in our 5th year, and that would be added to the cornerstone events. But it is an event that we run to honor our connection with Forez. There was no event in the city for ours other than with the sister cities of the exchange program. And so with Chris's help, when he was hired, one of the first things we talked about was we got to have a Scottish Highland get here. And he's been instrumental along with partners that we have used and donations and things that he's gone out and got. And over the last year, some of you have been to those events. We are becoming known within the Scottish community as a place to come because we pocketed that event at the perfect time of the year for them to come up. We get a lot of the top athletes that other people don't with bigger events. So that event is going to eventually become a cornerstone. But I wanted to show you the numbers that we crunched down so that you could see what the costs are. With the public service fees, what we pay our staff or those people that work the event, along with the benefits and along with the cost of doing those events, such as getting the bales of hay or getting the snow or light up Mount Dora and the show and all the production and everything that we do. These are the costs associated with that. But on the revenues end, Chris has been working more and more with different groups, getting grants, going and working with different people to bring in sponsorships. So if you note that the total cost to our cornerstone events, the ones that the city pays for, is $130,000. But when you take the revenues that we've gotten from the sponsorship away from that, basically we're $79,000 is basically the cost of us doing business in those events. We're losing that money, but when you look at the overall impact that we're having, and I'll show you that in the next slide, it's tremendous. For basically $80,000, you're getting an economic impact of almost $6 million. $6 million when you take in the low end of the attendance figures. We rounded this up, tried to stay at the lower end of the totem pole because numbers can go any way you want to make them. But this is generally what the lower end of those numbers would be. We sent these numbers again to Lake County. They ran it through their model, and this is what they came back as what our economic impact for those 9 events only. I separated those out from the other events. So this right here is a $6 million impact, as going back to what you were saying. There is value in that when you start talking about sales tax. No matter how many people we have, the higher the number, the greater amount of return we're going to get, even if we only have 13,000 on that alone. So when you take that, when you go to the next one, these are the sponsored events. These are the ones done by everybody else outside of us, the city. And if you'll notice in the column that says city cost, the only cost in there is that we get a $5,000 donation that comes in from Main Street Leasing to do the New Year's Eve fireworks off of the 4th Avenue docks. They pay the city pays the money, and generally we don't spend any money on that, so it's pretty much a wash. So if you take a look at where the city costs are, these over here are the costs associated to the vendors. We, being Chris, at the end of an event, will take all of the people that worked, get their timesheets, are all coded. Those coded ones will come in. He will send a bill to them, or they get a bill that lets them know this is what it's going to cost you to run that event. That is just their cost to the city to reimburse the city for using its personnel and its resources that we have. Now, a benefit is, by using our city staff and our resources, there's two benefits to that. First of all, our staff do a heck of a good job, and they know what they're doing when they come in and do the job. Second of all, it helps supplement their income. The rate that we get from people who go and do these events many times pays for their Christmas or other things that they need in their house because they're being paid. They work extra to do it. It's a great kind of a partnership. And I tell you what, we have to basically, we don't ever put a sign up and then have to beg people to fill that paper. Generally, they're waiting for that paper to come up so they can sign on it on the dime to get up there right away on it. And many of them do the same job over and over again because they've become accustomed to taking care of parking, or they, whatever that is that they're doing. When we do 1,100 bags of trash in a weekend or something of that nature, that's an awful lot of work. Everybody's moving, the police officer, anybody that's in that. And these costs are all borne by the people who run the event. That's not their cost to doing the event itself. That's just the cost to them to basically pay the city for their portion of it. And if you notice, that's about $147,000. Now, on the next one, when we did the budget this year, it took us a long time, but it took us about 3 months in our office to work with personnel and finance to try to figure out what it's costing us per event. And this goes to what we had talked about in the last meeting. We found that there were opportunities in here where in the past, the city managers or people that worked here before basically said this was the cost of doing business. We weren't charging for that. That which we were paying in our cornerstone events, for example, the Social Security, the FICA, or the pension, we absorb that as part of the event that we're doing when we do that. What was happening, though, is that we were charging none of this to the vendor. And it was acceptable practice when others were in charge. When we did this, we brought this to attention of both, I guess, council as well as our city manager and our finance director, and we saw that there are numbers there that we were losing money that on events that we're not running. Now, you asked us basically to look at this and try to bring it back to you with a solution. The only solution is that we either absorb the cost and continue to do that, or if you notice with the contracts the way they are, the pensions for the police and the fire are paid out of, have to be paid as well in this new system. If, for example, someone is being paid $17.85 and it's a general employee, we don't have to pay their pension in that. We took this from and got this from our finance department and made sure that these numbers were correct. So the total with benefits is $19.22. Basically rounding up, we would charge the vendor $20 for that time period, and that covers the cost. That would go on and on down to the rest of the bottom of the page here in regards to all of that. That would recoup that which is being paid now by the city. That would also mean that the rates are going to go up and costs are going to go up a lot for the vendors who are putting these shows on. And in some cases, that's an ouch point. So I don't know what the solution is. Certainly there's more arguments and solutions down the road that we can have in discussions. But this is the only way that we know of that will zero out what we have been paying and we move forward. And that may be something in our budget process you may want to discuss then, as opposed to maybe now. But at least that's the solution that was presented to us, and this brings it to a zero balance. The next one is, what do they bring in? These events that they pay for and they pay the city for and they bring into the city, many of these are established events, 45 years, 30 years, 20. Many of these events are nationally known. People come from all over to here. Well, these are the attendance figures at the low end again that we gave to Lake County, and they punched the numbers in. If you look at the bottom number there, we're talking $47 million of economic impact. And when you take that and you add it to the cornerstone event of $6 million, you take the sponsored event at 47, and then you take the monies that we get out of the community building, this city realizes $55 million in economic impact, and I don't think you could find another city in this area that has anywhere near that amount. But that has a direct impact on the people of this city when you talk about sales tax and other aspects of what we're talking about. So our cost, as minimum as they are, our value becomes a great deal more when we have these events in here. The next slide, basically another thing that's not necessarily talked about too, is that we have other things that come in town. When someone's doing an event, this is a marketing event, and I'm talking about marketing in the city. We don't have a lot of resources that we put toward marketing for this city. We have a PIO, we have a web page, and we have other things, but we don't really have a dedicated budget that goes toward marketing our city. However, our events and the people who attend from here and outside the city and everywhere else go out and advertise for us. But there's a value to that, and that's where you have to start looking at what value is that. I took one event and asked just for what you spend on advertising for your radio and your TV. When I go, I don't know if some of you, I know Mark's down in Orlando, but when you go down there and I visit down there and I stay overnight or something, I'm bombed by ads for Mount Dora on TV or on the radio when I'm down there. The radio and the TV down there, I know more about Mount Dora from going down to Orlando than I do sometimes living here. But there are values to what they're doing. They're putting out radio spots. If you listen to the radio spot, there is an implied value of just this one event for just their radio ads at $104,000. And they have value. And those are things that the city doesn't have to spend that money on when we look at our budgets and our general fund and say, we want to market our city. The beauty is that we have a system in place and a model in place that with vendors are advertising our work, and people are coming to Mount Dora. So when you take that and you add it into what's happening with the city as people are coming in, we're known as a festival city. We have been known that way. I can go to places, and many of you have done that, anywhere outside this state and talk about Mount Dora, and you'll run into somebody who's been to Mount Dora. I don't know why it is, but honest to God, I've run into people everywhere. If I have this thing on, I have more people wanting to talk about how they love Mount Dora than if you're from Lauderdale or Miami or something sometimes. So I think it's a value that we have, and we have to protect that value, but we have to do it the right way. We've got new residents coming in. Many of these residents, at least some, have come here because of the value of the city, of coming and enjoying the festivals, but they come back again and again. Our property values downtown, having the access to going downtown and eating. We wouldn't have 21 restaurants downtown if we didn't have people coming in town. And I said this to somebody the other day, if you emptied the city of all the businesses downtown and had the events, I still think people would come. But if you end the events, I don't know if you'd have a downtown. They work together. And because they work together, everybody wins. And so in this case, basically the bottom line is, I've said it before and I'll say it again, a rising tide raises all boats. Everybody working together is how we survive in this city, and that's why we've been so good at it for the number of years that we have. And with that, we get to the next one, which is, you can ask me questions.
Before we ask questions, I just want to give you Okay, questions on special events.
Are I'll certainly echo the mayor's, pardon my voice, echo the mayor's and this council's appreciation for what you do, and Chris. In the special events locations that you had, again, I'm sorry for my speech here, those did not include smaller venues such as St. Patrick's, Renegers, Lake City,
No, sir.
Lakeside and so forth.
Just city properties.
Right.
That's all we did.
So there are many other venues
Yes.
that participate in this.
And on a side note too, is that many of the people who come for the events discover our parks and other things and out on the boardwalk or out on some of the boats that are out there. So there's always some ripple effect.
And second comment, I just two of them, two more. The economic impact slide, that's just to Mount Dora?
Yes,
And it's
sir.
annually, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I didn't say that, and I understood it to be that way, though. And number three, just again, a personal comment, and it's repeating a little bit that I said before. The thing I'm most impressed with is the economic impact to this city, in which this council participates, our city government participates, reduces the pressure on real estate taxes. I would love to see a calculation that said, if we didn't have these events, here's what our real estate taxes, here's what our revenue would, here's what our mill levy would have to be to have the same thing, or we'd have to cut, slash and burn
Service.
many things, services, staff, whatever. It has a tremendous impact, in my view, and I think that's as valuable as it is. $50, $60 million annually has to provide a great impact, if I'm correct in my analysis, to reducing property taxes or keeping the pressure off.
And I think it was you that told me too that you read somewhere that in the last 5 years we've got $162 million worth of value from Lake County tourism.
162 million impact in 5 years.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Roy. That was fabulous presentation. But I do want to let everyone know, being in the real estate market, it actually helps Mount Dora's home values up. If everyone does notice, we're back up from when the recession hit. Prices are back up that way. And having festivals and events, community building, it keeps those home prices up. So I just want to say thank you on.
Well, it's a team effort. We all succeed when everybody succeeds. Thank you.
I missed part of what you said, when you said people come in and do the application, that there were two sides. When people come in, and maybe that was just a...
No, I'm just saying that no one gets any app. We basically have one application process.
Oh, okay. That's
So there's no, we don't pick sides, I guess is what I was saying. I think
Yeah.
some people have alluded that we give favoritism to certain groups. We don't. We're the Swiss. You come in, you got an application, we got the date open, you get it.
Well, the Swiss like the people with money, so I don't know, they pick sides.
I am too, sir.
And with that, I have to say that the crankiness of my questions is only because I'm looking out for the city as I see it. So while you might say that it's festivals that bring, folks here, I'm going to say that maybe it's trees, maybe it's,
Sure. It's a
pretty
combination of a lot
houses,
of
whatever it is. So given, and I agree, I mean, there's obviously an economic impact. I mean, that's silly to not say there isn't. But one of the things that I'm trying to understand when we talk about everything here is, we only have so many weekends, we have only so much space. Are they the right festivals? Are they the right rates? Because we looking out for the city can only charge so much in so much period of time. So knowing that, that's where I'm coming from. Because personally, I like the events, and I would have 5 times as many, and that would get a lot of people lighting up my phone. But I like them. But for us as a city, I think we just need to look at our rate structure so that by what we charge, we encourage whatever behavior that we're looking for, so that we have the right ones, the right number, and we use that as our lever. And then our economic impact, for us, it's to our business, to our core, I think it's the biggest, because obviously the spending goes there. It doesn't as much, I would say, help every citizen out in the city, because that money goes into the big bucket that's divided by 3 and then divided by 14 based on population. So we get, our sales tax is 1.2 million or 1 million?
It's
1.2, so, I mean, plus or minus, one,
That's the sales tax revenue fund.
yeah. So the
We have
sales,
sales tax from the general fund also.
right. So, I mean, it's incremental and it's good, it's just more for that group. So when we're looking and talking, I want to think about the entire city impact.
Right.
So that's all I had.
I appreciated this a great deal, and this is Roy, I thought your memo to us clarifying what the meeting was about and so on was right on the money. But there's a lot to be, and I agree with Mr. Slavy, we do need to talk about rates, we do need to talk about a number of other things. This is the first piece, this is what we need to go forward, I think gives us what we need to do budget-wise. But I sure hope, and I had mentioned at our goal-setting meeting that I would love to see another workshop in the future where we could have the Chamber of Commerce, Visit Mount Dora, other stakeholders, because we all have our own points of view about, well, we're paying, we're providing too many services, and their point of view might be, and we're not getting enough revenue, and look at all this marketing we're doing, and so on. The better we can understand, each partner understands the other partners, I think the more effective we'll be, and we might be able to tweak and so on, that would benefit everyone concerned. So I sure hope, and at this point, with the new city manager coming in a matter of weeks, I just hope we can get that on the calendar, because that's essential that we keep the conversation going and we can keep the partnerships strong, and by knowing more about what one another need to be successful, I think we'll all be more successful. So I hope we can do that.
I couldn't agree more. If I might just piggyback on that. It isn't this council of this city that gets this revenue. It's the people sitting out here that do it. So that's a great suggestion, is to have workshops that include those that are really the partners in this, and not have us in a vacuum, not fully understanding the whole picture. We would with them, and I totally support that idea.
Mr. Roulette?
Glad to see we have proposed payment changes, or changes for fee structure. That should eliminate our $167,000 close to it. That's
about
deficit
25.
on that. Okay. And
It's
that's
20
good.
it's
We need to
25
do it. And as far as the cornerstone events, that ought to be profitable for the city. In the point that, we'll just say food trucks. You don't need a middleman. Chris is our man. Food truck comes into town, the city gets the check. Don't need anybody else to get a check and pass it to Chris. So I think we could make our cornerstone events, the people's cornerstone events, because the taxpayers are the ones ultimately, losing on that.
Okay.
Very good
Anyone else?
presentation.
My only comments or questions are pretty much budget related, so I'm gonna defer till we get into the budget workshop part of it, but
I just want to make
I'm not,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to say one thing, is that I am a prime example of the kind of, or of a person who came down here to visit friends and go to the art festival in a February. I was escaping the horrible winters of Southern Virginia. And literally, Ed and I fell in love with Mount Dora, and basically turned to each other and said, well, we're gonna have to sell our house and move here, after one weekend. So there are other people like me out there, and we did. So anyway, lots of people are like that.
There's some things I agree with what the council's talking about, some I don't. Just give it, when we talk about, I think, a city spending money for events, it's something cities do as a business to attract people into a city. And to attract somebody in, you gotta make a cost factor. And I'm just gonna, real quick, I wanna go, some part of my history, my family was in the fireworks business, and they owned the fireworks business during the Great Depression. And believe it or not, the family's business made probably some of their best profits during the Depression because cities didn't have money. But what they did was turned around and spent money for fireworks shows back then to have something to liven the people up. So it's something that you've got to deal with the city, and I think it's a philosophy thing that we got to look at. Every business that I know who's into any kind of retail business does what they call loss leaders, and you want to consider maybe what we're doing in a city where you have to spend X amount of dollars to attract the people in. We have to put any kind of investment. So I don't want to be so rigid on one end, but I know the city from the other side that you need to cover some costs. You're never going to cover all your costs. Our cemetery was a good example. I mean, when I first got on council, it was always debated every year. We lose this money. We lose $150,000 a year, whatever that money is we lose in the cemetery. Well, you can't charge everybody, at the rate what your loss is, and charge everybody who's going to be buried in there an equal amount of dollars, so doesn't have any loss. It's something we got to eat as a city. And they said, well, sell it. Well, you can't sell it because if whoever you sell it to goes out of business, we get it back, and you're going to have those costs anyway. So just forget it. It's one of those things that we pay as a city that we're not going to ever make any money on, and we pay it. There's going to be other things that we do in a city that we're not going to make money on, but we do it because of this economic impact that we're talking about. It's not a growth, it's an impact. And you're right, yes, it does attract people here. Our property values, I think, maintain, we do good. But there's going to be a common ground, I think, that when we talk about making adjustments in rates, and I think what we did with the water rates was a good example, was 10 years we didn't do water rates, and all of a sudden, boom, we got a big rate on our hands. Same thing with this. You don't want to hit rates all at once. If you're going to increase anything, to look at it down the road, philosophically, do it gradually, a little bit at a time, okay? And then you get to where you want to go. Just my thoughts on it, and are we all done, I guess, with this?
Yeah, are we ready to?
Yeah, we're just going to go right into the budget workshop then.
Thank you.
Yeah, can we get a
10-minute break? 5-minute break?
Yeah, sure, let's take a break.
Will we
Yes, 10 minutes, we'll do it.